Welcome to your midweek cybersecurity executive briefing, brought to you by Clock Tower Technology Services and the United Regional Chamber of Commerce. I'm Brian Sulo, your virtual CISO for the next 15 minutes. My company is Clock Tower Technology Services, and we provide IT, telecom, and information security services to businesses with 10 to 100 employees. But this isn't a sales pitch, so if you want to learn more about us and what we do and how we do it, we can talk later. Today is Wednesday, September 29th, and right now I'm going to bring you the cybersecurity news and takeaways that you can use in your business today. Today's episode is a little different. I have a commitment on Wednesday at noon, so I'm pre-recording this content, which means there's no live audience. The past week has provided a plethora of cybersecurity stories for me to wade through, and picking out the stories that would be relevant to you took longer than usual. So without further delay, here are this week's top cybersecurity stories. From bleepingcomputer.com, VoIP providers are being held for ransom, but not by ransomware. It seems that someone figured out that Voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP, services that provide most small business telephone service are very susceptible to distributed denial of service, or DDoS, attacks. This threat actor, or perhaps multiple threat actors, is going around knocking VoIP providers offline until they pay extortion demands. My takeaway is that this is one of those problems that seems likely to get worse before it gets better. The ease with which this can be done is enticing to the criminals, which will only increase the frequency of attacks until a technical mitigation is developed and adopted by the VoIP carriers. From ThreatPost, a new means of harvesting Microsoft Exchange mailbox credentials was documented this week. I won't go into the technical details because that's not what this briefing is about, but suffice it to say that it takes advantage of a fairly common misconfiguration in a domain's DNS records. The Domain Name Service, or DNS, is a globally distributed system that allows computers to find resources on the internet, and it's integral to email and the automatic configuration of features of Microsoft Outlook. This is called Autodiscover. By abusing some known flaws in the way Autodiscover works, researchers were able to harvest hundreds of thousands of passwords as Outlook clients attempted to configure themselves for their organization's Exchange servers. My takeaway: your domain's DNS needs to be configured properly and securely. It's foundational to cybersecurity. Many small businesses don't even know who has control of their DNS. Often, it's their web developer. I don't want to cast aspersions on web developers, but I've personally dealt with too many whose only knowledge of DNS is how to create the record that points www to their web server. At least once a year, we have a client whose email is brought offline because the web developer decided to move DNS to a new host and didn't copy the necessary DNS records properly. DNS for your domain should be controlled by your IT department or provider, not by someone you talk to once every couple of years when you need to make a change to your website. Next up, from Security Affairs, a recently uncovered phishing-as-a-service service that has been in operation since 2018. You've heard of software as a service. It's how most of today's applications are licensed and delivered. You pay a monthly fee and you get to use the software. In exchange, you don't have to worry about installation or upgrades or security. Think QuickBooks Online, for example. Well, anything can be delivered in that model. There's hardware as a service, infrastructure as a service, and yes, even phishing as a service. This particular service, known as BulletProofLink, allows criminals with very little technical expertise to outsource all of the technical bits of running a phishing campaign. BulletProofLink runs an online store that allows its customers to manage the entire phishing campaign from setting up fake sites to sending the emails to collecting and selling the credentials. My takeaway on this, well, this is a reminder that cybercrime is a mature business model. We're not fighting kids in their mother's basements. Cybercriminal organizations are large and well-funded, and our defenses must match the threat. Speaking of phishing, ThreatPost reports a phishing campaign using spoofed Zix encrypted emails. Zix is a platform for sending encrypted email that is used almost ubiquitously in the mortgage industry and extensively among others. This campaign is particularly pernicious as it is well researched and targeted to specific individuals within an organization. We call this spear phishing. ZDNet reports that cybercriminals are moving away from credential harvesting phishing attacks to business email compromise. From the article, quote, according to the FBI, BEC is when criminals use email to abuse trust in business processes, scamming organizations out of money or goods. This type of fraud is different from traditional phishing scams, as criminals impersonate business representatives using similar names, domains, or fraudulent logos. They may even use compromised email accounts from internal personnel and pretend to be a trusted coworker. Small businesses are being hurt financially by these types of scams. Earlier in 2021, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Massachusetts issued a warning to small businesses that received loans through the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, noting a dramatic increase in reports of BEC schemes related to the program. In December 2020, the Small Business Administration released the exact loan amounts for more than 600,000 small businesses and nonprofit organizations that received at least $150,000 in loans. Scammers used this information to impersonate PPP lenders, requesting additional information about loan applications or loan forgiveness. What makes these scam emails dangerous isn't just the level of sophistication, according to security researchers at Microsoft. Because they look like legitimate network traffic, BEC attacks generally evade spam lists and have a much higher likelihood of landing in target inboxes. End quote. The takeaway here is that employees need to be wary of every message they receive, regardless of who it purports to be from. Asking the following questions will help keep you safe. Number 1, was this message unexpected? 2, is there an elevated sense of urgency to this message? 3, is the message asking me to provide sensitive data? 4, am I being asked to provide any credentials to access the content of the message? If you answer yes to any of those questions, take a breath and take a second thought. That second thought could save you from being a victim of cybercrime. An additional takeaway is that requests for changes to financial transaction information should always be confirmed in person or by calling the other party at a known phone number. Another report from Security Affairs warns of a newly discovered and actively exploited flaw in VMware vCenter that allows for remote code execution. That means attackers can upload their own files to a vCenter server and run them on that server. vCenter is the management utility for VMware environments. VMware is a popular platform for hosting virtual servers. My takeaway is threefold. First of all, if you don't know, find out if any of your servers are hosted in VMware environments. Second, if you do use VMware, make sure your IT services team have already patched this vulnerability, as it's already being exploited. Third, ensure that your vCenter server is not accessible from the internet. Accessing vCenter should require first connecting through a VPN for proper security. The Hacker News reports yet another vulnerability in Google Chrome that is being actively exploited. This is the 12th zero-day vulnerability in Chrome since the start of 2021. A zero-day vulnerability is one that the criminals are already using before a patch is developed. My takeaway is the same as it has been for the last 11. If you're using Google Chrome, update it manually. Don't just wait for the update to come out. Again, from the Hacker News, a host of security vulnerabilities in older versions of Apple's iOS and macOS operating systems. Some patched and some not, but all bad and all being actively exploited. The patched vulnerabilities are of the type known as zero-click, a class of vulnerabilities that allow threat actors to execute code on a device by sending a message through iMessage in this case. It's called a zero-click vulnerability because the victim doesn't need to interact with the message in any way for the payload to be delivered. Patches for these vulnerabilities are available for devices running macOS, Catalina, and iPhone 5S, iPhone 6, iPhone 6 Plus, iPad Air, iPad Mini 2, iPad Mini 3, and iPod Touch, 6th generation, running iOS 12.5.4. If you have any of these devices in your organization, make sure to patch them immediately. The unpatched vulnerabilities include one that allows a threat actor who has physical access to an affected iPhone to bypass the lock screen to gain access to the user's notes. Knowing that many people store sensitive data, including passwords and bank account information in the Notes app, this is fairly serious. My takeaways from this article are patch, patch, patch. Make sure your IT support team is patching your systems and verifying that your systems are patched. And don't rely on your mobile phone's security features to protect you from an adversary who has physical access to the device. Keep your mobile device physically secure at all times. Also, don't store passwords in the Notes app. Just not a good idea. Finally, from darkreading.com, consumer security firm ARA recently released a survey of 2,000 U.S. adults and their thoughts about cybersecurity. The results are interesting. Here are a few highlights from the article, interspersed with my takeaways. Although the survey was done with U.S. consumers in mind, it's wholly applicable to small businesses. Quote, most, 60%, of U.S. adults worry a lot about data breaches and the safety of their personal information online. 34% have stopped paying attention to breaches because they happen so often. Takeaway? It's not useful to be paying attention to every data breach. Your IT team should be alerting you if you or your employees have been the victim of a data breach. This is easy enough to monitor, and they should be offering this service, either as a standard part of their services or as an add-on security package. Next quote. Roughly half, 51%, of Americans who have experienced cybercrime have opened emails from unknown senders, and 50% have downloaded software or files from unknown origins. Takeaways. Security awareness training is key. I always say that technical safeguards are critical, but can only do so much if your employees are letting the bad guys in the front door. Also, you need to control the software that is downloaded on your company's systems. Again, your IT service provider should be offering security awareness training and some form of application control. At the very least, users should not have the ability to install arbitrary software. Quote, nearly 3/4 of cybercrime victims have used the same password across multiple accounts. Takeaway. This risk is mitigated through security awareness training and password management. Users need to understand the criticality of not reusing passwords, but they also need a way to make that a natural part of the process. Your organization needs to standardize on a password management system like Bitwarden or LastPass that is centrally managed and used by all employees. Next quote. Most, 79%, of U.S. adults acknowledge they may not be doing enough to protect their personal information online, but point to obstacles that keep them from doing so. Of those who feel they can do more, 36% say it's too time-consuming, and 33% don't know what they should be doing. My takeaway? Adopt a cybersecurity framework. Find someone who can guide your organization to becoming objectively secure, whether that's me or your current IT service provider. The information to do this is readily available. It just takes commitment from organizational leaders to see it through. And that's your cybersecurity executive briefing for this week. The best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn. If you have a question about anything that was covered, send me a message, and I'm happy to discuss it privately. Remember that the stories presented are selected to be relevant to our audience, based on the technologies they've said they're using. If you are using other technologies in your organization and you'd like those covered, please let me know. I'll be off next week, so I won't be recording a show, but I'll see you again on the 13th of October. Until next time, stay safe, stay in touch. Together, we are secure.